The day Arya Mitchell discovered she was carrying Dante Valentino's child, she also discovered the truth. He'd orchestrated it. Every gentle touch, every whispered promise, every moment she thought she was falling in love, calculated. The mafia boss who saved her dying mother hadn't just bought her body. He'd engineered a permanent claim. Now, standing in his marble bathroom with the positive test in her shaking hands, Arya faced an impossible reality. She could hate him. She could leave him. But she couldn't escape him. Not anymore. If you're intrigued by stories of power, passion, and impossible choices, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. What? The Valentino estate didn't sleep, but it pretended to. At 3 in the morning, the silence was a performance. Expensive rugs muffling footsteps, thick walls containing secrets, marble hallways echoing nothing but the occasional click of a guard's radio. Arya had learned to move through this silence like a ghost. 5 months working as a maid here, and she'd perfected the art of being invisible. She pushed her cleaning cart down the west corridor, its wheels the only sound breaking the quiet. Her back ached. Her feet throbbed in the cheap shoes she couldn't afford to replace. The headache that had started at noon was now a steady pulse behind her eyes. But she had 4 more hours on this shift, then a 2-hour break, then another 6-hour shift at the hotel downtown. Sleep wasn't a luxury she could afford. The cart squeaked. She winced, slowing down as she approached the last door on the left. Dante Valentino's private office. She'd been told to clean it tonight, unusual since it was normally off limits. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, had handed her the key with a strange look. "He requested you specifically," Mrs. Chen had said, her wrinkled face unreadable. "Don't touch anything on his desk. Don't open any drawers. In and out, understood?" Arya had nodded, taking the key with trembling fingers. In 5 months, she'd seen Dante Valentino exactly 3 times, always from a distance. Once getting out of a black sedan in the circular driveway, flanked by men in expensive suits. Once through a window, standing in the garden with his phone pressed to his ear, his expression carved from stone. Once passing through the main hall while she scrubbed the floor on her hands and knees, her face turned down, her heart hammering as his Italian leather shoes clicked past without pausing. She knew what he was. Everyone knew. The Valentino family didn't hide their power. They wore it like a second skin. Dante had inherited the empire at 26 when his father died under circumstances no one discussed. Now, at 30, he controlled half the city's underground operations and most of its legitimate businesses. Politicians took his calls. Police looked the other way. People who crossed him disappeared. Arya unlocked the office door, her hands steadier than her breathing. The room beyond was dark except for the city lights filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. She flipped the switch, and warm light flooded the space. It was beautiful in a cold, masculine way. Dark wood panels, leather furniture, a massive desk that probably cost more than her mother's entire medical debt. Bookshelves lined with volumes that looked red, not decorative. A bar cart with crystal decanters, everything precise, controlled, expensive. She started with the windows, spraying glass cleaner and wiping in careful circles. Her reflection stared back, 23 years old but looking older. Dark circles under her eyes, brown hair pulled into a messy bun, thin frame swimming in a uniform 2 sizes too big. Nothing special. Nothing anyone would notice. That's what she told herself. That's what she needed to be. "You missed a spot." "Isn't the same." Arya spun around, the cleaning bottle slipping from her fingers and hitting the floor with a plastic thud. Her heart launched into her throat. Dante Valentino stood in the doorway she'd left open, watching her with eyes the color of smoke. He was tall, over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been sculpted by someone who understood both beauty and cruelty. He wore black slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle. No tie. Top button undone. I'm sorry, Mr. Valentino." Arya's voice came out strangled. She bent to retrieve the bottle, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it again. "I didn't know you were here. Mrs. Chen said to clean your office. She gave me the key. I can come back." "Stay." The single word froze her in place. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a soft click that sounded like a cell locking. He moved to the bar cart, pouring 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal glass. "You're Arya Mitchell." Not a question, a statement. She nodded, not trusting her voice. 23 years old, started working here 5 months ago through a temp agency. You work 3 jobs. Here, the Grandmont Hotel downtown, and weekend shifts at a diner on 5th Street. He took a slow sip of his drink, his gaze never leaving her. Your mother, Patricia Mitchell, was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer 8 months ago. The treatment she needs costs approximately $300,000. You have $62 in your checking account. The blood drained from Arya's face. How do you think I don't know everyone who works in my home? Dante set his glass down, the sound sharp in the quiet. You think I let strangers touch my things, breathe my air, without knowing everything about them? I don't understand. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why would you care about? Because I've been watching you. He said it casually, like commenting on the weather. For 3 months now, since the day you fainted in the South Hall and my head of security had to carry you to the servants' quarters. Arya remembered that day with burning shame. She'd been on hour 19 of a 22-hour shift between all 3 jobs. The world had just tilted, gone black. She'd woken up on a cot with Mrs. Chen pressing water to her lips and threatening to fire her if it happened again. I didn't mean to cause trouble, she said. It won't happen again. You work yourself to death. Dante picked up his glass again, swirling the liquid. 70, 80 hours a week. You eat 1 meal a day if you're lucky. You sleep 4 hours a night. Your shoes have holes in them. Your uniform is falling apart. And still, it's not enough, is it? The medical bills keep growing. Your mother's time keeps running out. Tears burned behind Arya's eyes. She blinked them back furiously. I don't need your pity. Good, because I'm not offering it. He drained his glass and set it down with finality. I'm offering you a deal. Something in his tone made her skin prickle with warning. What kind of deal? Come work for me, exclusively. I'll pay off your mother's medical debt, every cent. I'll arrange for her to receive treatment at the best cancer center in the country, under the best specialists. Money will never be an obstacle to her care again. Arya's heart stopped, then started again with painful force. In exchange for what? You. He said it simply, his gray eyes locked on hers. You move into this house, you quit your other jobs, you belong to me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Arya's mind raced, trying to process, trying to understand. Belong to you. As what? A maid? No. Dante moved closer, and she fought the instinct to back away. He stopped a few feet from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. Not a maid, not a servant. You'll live in the room next to mine. You'll eat when I tell you to eat, sleep when I tell you to sleep. You'll let me take care of you, and in return, you'll be available to me. Her stomach twisted. Available. I won't touch you without your permission. His voice was steady, matter of fact. But you'll give me your time, your company, your attention. You'll be mine to look at, to talk to keep close. And when you're ready, if you're ready, you'll give me more than that. You're asking me to be your... She couldn't even say the word. I'm asking you to let me keep you. He tilted his head slightly, studying her reaction. The terms are non-negotiable. You agree, your mother gets treated tomorrow. The debt disappears. You get to stop running yourself into an early grave. All you have to do is say yes. Arya's breath came in short, shallow gasps. This was insane. He was insane. She should run, scream, grab her cart, and get as far from this man as possible. But her mother's face swam in her mind. Her mother, who'd raised her alone after her father walked out. Her mother, who'd worked 2 jobs to put Arya through community college. Her mother who was dying because they couldn't afford the treatment that would save her life. Why? The question came out broken. Why me? You could have anyone. Women who are beautiful, sophisticated, who belong in your world. I don't want them. Dante's expression didn't change. I want you. But why? For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Something she couldn't read. Because when you fainted in my hallway, you apologized before you even opened your eyes. Because you work 3 jobs and still smile at the other staff when you pass them. Because you're killing yourself to save someone you love, and you don't expect anything from anyone. He paused. Because you're real. And in my world, real is fucking rare. Arya's hands were shaking so badly she had to clench them into fists. This is crazy. Yes? I don't even know you. You will? I can't just. This is my life. I can't just give it away. You're not giving it away. His voice hardened slightly. You're trading it for your mother's life. That's a trade most people would make without hesitation. He was right. She knew he was right, and she hated him for it. How long? She whispered. How long what? How long would I have to belong to you? Dante considered this. As long as it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, holding it out to her. You have 24 hours to decide. Call the number on this card and say yes or say no. Either way, you keep your job here as a maid. Your mother's care continues at its current pace. Nothing changes except your knowledge that you had a choice. Arya took the card with numb fingers. It was heavy, expensive cardstock with a single phone number embossed in black. 24 hours, Dante repeated. He moved past her toward the door, and she caught his scent again, leather and smoke and something darker. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. For what it's worth, Arya, I'll take care of you. That's not a threat. It's a promise. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving her alone in his office with a cleaning cart, a business card, and an impossible decision. Arya didn't sleep that night. She finished her shift at the estate in a daze, her mind replaying the conversation over and over. She went to the hotel, cleaned rooms on autopilot while the card burned in her pocket. She took the bus to the hospital during her break and sat beside her mother's bed, watching her sleep. Patricia Mitchell looked small under the thin hospital blanket. Too small. The cancer was eating her alive, and the treatments they could afford were barely slowing it down. Her hair had thinned. Her skin had taken on a grayish pallor. She was 51 years old and looked 70. Hey, baby. Her mother's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Arya with effort. You look tired. I'm fine, Mom. Liar. Patricia tried to smile. You work too much. I work enough. Arya took her mother's hand, careful of the IV. How are you feeling? Like $1,000,000. The lie was gentle, familiar. They'd been lying to each other for months now, pretending the situation wasn't as desperate as it was. They talked about nothing: the weather, a TV show Patricia liked, a nurse who'd been kind. Arya didn't mention Dante Valentino or his offer. She didn't mention the card in her pocket that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. When visiting hours ended, she kissed her mother's forehead and left. She worked her shift at the diner, serving coffee and eggs to truckers and insomniacs. She went back to her tiny studio apartment as the sun rose, stared at the card on her kitchen counter, and tried to figure out who she was. The good daughter who would do anything to save her mother? Or the coward who would sell herself to a monster? Maybe both. Maybe neither. 23 hours after Dante Valentino made his offer, Arya picked up her phone. Her fingers trembled as she dialed the number. It rang once. Yes? His voice, smooth and dark. She closed her eyes. I need to know something first. Ask. If I say yes, can I still see my mother? Talk to her? Whenever you want, I'll have a driver take you. And if I want to leave? After she's better, if I want to walk away? Silence stretched for several seconds. Then, we'll discuss that when the time comes. Not a yes, not a no. Arya's throat tightened. That's not fair. No, Dante agreed. It's not. But fairness is a luxury, Arya. And right now, you're out of luxuries. She thought about her mother's gray skin, the unpaid bills stacked on her counter, the bone-deep exhaustion that never went away. The slow, grinding certainty that no matter how hard she worked, it would never be enough. Okay, she whispered. Okay, what? I'll do it. I'll belong to you. Say it clearly. I need to hear you choose this. Anger flared in her chest, hot and bright. But she swallowed it down and spoke the words that would change everything. I choose to accept your offer, Dante. I'll move into your house. I'll let you take care of me. I'll be yours. Good girl. The approval in his voice made her skin flush with something she didn't want to name. Pack your things. I'm sending a car in 2 hours. Someone will handle notifying your landlord and your other employers. Wait, today? I need time to... 2 hours, Arya. Your mother's first treatment at Rosewood Cancer Center is scheduled for tomorrow morning. I suggest you use your time to call her and explain." The line went dead. Arya stood in her apartment, phone pressed to her ear, listening to silence. Then she lowered it slowly and looked around at her life. A studio apartment with water-stained walls, furniture from thrift stores, a mattress on the floor. Nothing that mattered except the photos of her mother taped to the mirror. She had just sold herself. And the worst part was the relief flooding through her veins. Relief that she could finally stop running, stop fighting, stop pretending she could fix this alone. 2 hours later, she stood on the curb with a single duffel bag as a black sedan pulled up. The driver got out, a broad-shouldered man in a dark suit who introduced himself as Marco, and opened the rear door without meeting her eyes. The drive to the Valentino estate took 20 minutes. Marco didn't speak. Arya watched the city blur past, her heart beating faster with each mile. When they pulled through the iron gates and up the long driveway, the house looked different than it had when she'd scrubbed its floors. It looked like a prison made of marble and money. Mrs. Chen met her at the entrance, her expression carefully neutral. "Miss Mitchell, welcome. I'll show you to your room." "I don't understand." Arya's voice was hoarse. "Yesterday I was staff. Today I'm... What am I?" "You're Mr. Valentino's guest." Mrs. Chen's tone was professional, giving nothing away. "Your room is in the private wing, next to his suite. You'll take meals with him when he requests. Otherwise, you're free to move through the house as you wish. The staff has been informed that you're to be treated with respect." They climbed a grand staircase Arya had only ever cleaned, walked down hallways she'd only ever seen while carrying supplies. Mrs. Chen stopped at a door, opened it, and stepped aside. The room beyond stole Arya's breath. It was bigger than her entire apartment. A 4-poster bed with silk sheets, a sitting area with a velvet couch, windows overlooking the gardens, an ensuite bathroom with marble counters and a tub that could fit 3 people. "Mr. Valentino had the closet stocked with clothes in your size." Mrs. Chen gestured to a door. "If anything doesn't fit or suit your taste, let me know and we'll arrange replacements." Arya set her duffel bag down with numb hands. "This is too much. This is what he wants you to have." Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly. "A word of advice, Miss Mitchell. Mr. Valentino is not a patient man, but he's not cruel without cause. If you're honest with him, you'll find your time here manageable." Before Arya could respond, Mrs. Chen left, closing the door softly behind her. Arya stood alone in her new prison, looking at luxury she'd never imagined, and fought the urge to run. She didn't see Dante that first day, or the second. She was told he was handling business in Chicago. In his absence, she existed in a strange limbo. Not staff, not quite guest, not anything she had words for. She ate meals brought to her room on silver trays. She swam in the indoor pool when the staff assured her it was allowed. She called her mother and lied smoothly about a new job opportunity, a live-in position with excellent benefits. Patricia had cried with relief, and Arya had cried too for different reasons. On the 3rd day, a woman in a designer suit arrived and informed Arya that her mother's first treatment had gone well. The doctors were optimistic. The debt had been paid in full. Arya sat on her velvet couch after the woman left and sobbed until she had nothing left. On the 4th day, Dante returned. Arya was in the library, a 2-story room lined with more books than she could read in a lifetime, when she heard his voice in the hallway. Her whole body went rigid. She thought about hiding, but there was nowhere to go. The door opened. "There you are." Dante looked the same as he had in his office. Controlled, expensively dressed, dangerous. But there was something in his eyes when he looked at her. Something almost pleased. "You've been avoiding the dining room. I didn't know if I was supposed to. You're supposed to eat." He crossed the room, his movements fluid and predatory. "You've lost weight since you moved in. That stops now. I've been eating the meals they bring. In your room. Alone." He stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Tonight, you eat with me. 7 o'clock. Don't be late." Then he was gone again, leaving her heart racing and her hands clenched in her lap, set. At 7 o'clock, Arya stood outside the formal dining room in a dress she'd found in her closet. Deep green, simple, but clearly expensive. Her hair was down, brushed until it shone. She'd put on makeup for the first time in months, trying to hide the evidence of her crying. She pushed open the door. The dining room was intimate despite its size, with a table that could seat 20 but was set for two. Candles flickered. Classical music played softly. Dante sat at the head of the table in a black suit, no tie, reading something on his phone. He looked up as she entered, and his gaze traveled over her slowly, deliberately. Beautiful. Arya's face heated. Thank you for my mother, for everything. Sit. He gestured to the chair on his right, not opposite him, but close, within arm's reach. She sat, her spine straight, her hands folded in her lap. A staff member she didn't recognize appeared to pour wine and serve the first course. Then they were alone. Eat, Dante said. Arya picked up her fork, but her stomach was in knots. I'm not very hungry. Eat anyway. It wasn't a request. She took a small bite of salad, then another. Dante watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. After a few minutes of silence, he spoke. Tell me about your mother. The question caught her off guard. What do you want to know? Anything, everything. What's she like? Arya hesitated, then found herself talking. About Patricia's terrible sense of humor, her love of old movies, the way she hummed while cooking, her dreams of traveling that she'd never had money to pursue. Dante listened without interrupting, his gray eyes never leaving her face. When she finally trailed off, he nodded slowly. You love her very much. She's all I have. Not anymore. His voice was soft, but there was steel underneath. Now you have me. Arya's throat tightened. I don't even know you. Then ask me something. Why? The question burst out before she could stop it. Why me, really? I'm nobody. I'm nothing special. You could have... Anyone, he finished for her. Yes, but I don't want anyone. I want you. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. Do you know what I do, Arya? I control things. Money, territory, people. I make decisions that affect thousands of lives. I have more power than most people dream of. He paused, and none of it matters when I walk into an empty house at the end of the day. So I'm what? A pet? A distraction? You're something real in a world of transactions. His jaw tightened. You're someone who doesn't want anything from me except your mother's life. You don't see dollar signs when you look at me. You see a man who scares you, and you're still here anyway because you're brave enough to save what you love. I'm not brave. I'm desperate. Same thing sometimes. He reached for his wine, took a slow sip. You think you're trapped, but you made a choice. You can unmake it. Can I? Arya met his eyes directly for the first time. You said we'd discuss me leaving when the time comes. That's not the same as letting me go. No, Dante agreed. It's not, because I'm going to do everything I can to make you want to stay. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Arya's pulse hammered in her throat. What if I never want to stay? Then I'll deal with that when it happens. He set his glass down with a soft clink. But I don't think that's how this ends, Arya. I think you're going to surprise yourself. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she'd never choose this, never choose him. But the words stuck in her throat, because part of her, a small traitorous part, wondered if he might be right. They finished dinner in silence. When the plates were cleared, Dante stood and offered his hand. Walk with me. It wasn't a question, but Arya took his hand anyway. His palm was warm, his grip careful. He led her through the house to the back terrace, where the garden spread out under a full moon. I have rules, he said, as they walked down a stone path. Not many, but they're non-negotiable. Arya's stomach tightened. What kind of rules? You eat 3 meals a day. If I think you're not eating enough, I'll feed you myself. His tone was casual, but she heard the threat underneath. You sleep at least 7 hours a night. You see your mother whenever you want, but Marco drives you. You don't leave the estate alone without telling me where you're going. That sounds like I'm a prisoner. You're protected. There's a difference. He stopped walking, turning to face her. I have enemies, Arya. People who would hurt you to get to me. As long as you're mine, you're a target. I won't apologize for keeping you safe. I never asked for this. No. You asked to save your mother. This is the price. His hand came up, his fingers brushing her cheek so gently it made her shiver. I know it's not fair. I know you didn't want this. But I'm a selfish man, and I'm keeping you anyway. Arya's breath caught. And if I say no, If I try to leave right now, I'd let you walk to the gates? His thumb traced her jaw. But I'd also know your mother's next treatment is in 2 weeks, and I'd wonder how you'd pay for it without me. Rage and helplessness flooded through her in equal measure. You're a bastard. Yes, no shame, no apology. But I'm a bastard who will give you everything you need, shelter, safety, your mother's life. All you have to do is let me. Let you what? Keep you. His gray eyes held hers, dark with something she couldn't name. Let me take care of you. Let me look at you and know you're mine. And eventually, when you're ready, let me touch you. Her heart hammered against her ribs. I'll never be ready. We'll see. He dropped his hand, stepping back. It's late. You should sleep. He walked her back to her room, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. At her door, he paused. Arya. She looked up at him, this man who owned her life now, and waited. Thank you, he said quietly, for giving me this, for trusting me with it. Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, disappearing into his own room next door. Arya stood in her doorway for a long moment, then went inside and locked herself in. She'd sold herself to a monster, and the terrifying part was how gentle he'd been about it. Days blurred into weeks. Dante was often gone. Business trips, meetings, things he never explained and she never asked about. When he was home, they fell into a routine. Dinner together every night, walks in the garden, conversations that felt too intimate for strangers but too careful for anything else. He was true to his word about the rules. If she skipped breakfast, he'd appear in her room with a tray and watch her eat every bite. If she looked tired, he'd send her to bed like she was a child. If she wanted to visit her mother, Marco would have the car ready in minutes. Patricia was improving. The treatments at Rosewood were working. She had color in her cheeks again, energy in her voice. She asked about Arya's new job with bright curiosity, and Arya lied with a smile, describing a rich family who needed help with their home, a generous salary, comfortable living arrangements. Her mother never questioned why Arya suddenly had designer clothes, or why a driver waited outside during visits. She was too grateful, too focused on getting better. And Arya let her believe the lie because the truth, that her daughter had sold herself to a criminal, would break her. Dante didn't touch her, not beyond the occasional brush of fingers, the hand at her back, the thumb across her cheek. He watched her constantly with those storm-gray eyes, like he was memorizing every detail. Sometimes she'd catch him staring and he wouldn't look away, wouldn't pretend, wouldn't apologize. He just watched her like she was something precious he was afraid might disappear. It should have felt threatening. Instead, it felt like drowning slowly in warm water. One night, 6 weeks after she'd moved in, Arya woke to the sound of someone screaming. She bolted upright, heart pounding, disoriented in the darkness. The sound came again, a man's voice, raw with pain or terror. It was coming from Dante's room. She should have stayed in bed, should have pulled the covers over her head and pretended she heard nothing. Instead, she found herself at his door, her hand hovering over the knob. The screaming had stopped. Now there was only harsh breathing, the sound of someone fighting for control. Arya opened the door. Dante's room was dark except for the moonlight through the windows. He sat on the edge of his bed, his head in his hands, his shoulders heaving. He wore only pajama pants, and in the dim light she could see scars crossing his back, thick, raised lines that looked like they'd been made with something sharp. Dante? Her voice was barely a whisper. His head snapped up. Even in the darkness, she could see the wildness in his eyes, the way his hands shook. Get out! You were screaming, I said get out, Arya. She should have listened. Instead, she stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Are you okay? Do I look okay? His voice was harsh, broken. Leave. Now. No. She didn't know where the bravery came from. Maybe it wasn't bravery at all. Maybe it was just 6 weeks of watching this controlled, dangerous man treat her like glass, and seeing him shatter felt like permission to be human. What happened? A nightmare. It's nothing. It's not nothing. She moved closer, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. Do you have them often? He laughed, the sound bitter. Every night, sometimes multiple times. It's part of the job description. What job? Being a monster? The words came out sharper than she intended. Dante's eyes locked on hers, and for a moment she thought he'd yell, throw something, prove her right. Instead, He just looked tired. Yeah, something like that. Arya sat down on the bed beside him, leaving a careful foot of space between them. Tell me. Why? So you can feel sorry for me? So you can understand the broken man who bought you? Maybe? She picked at the edge of her nightgown, her voice quiet. Or maybe because I want to know who I belong to. Silence stretched between them. Then, so softly she almost missed it. My father used to lock me in the basement when I disappointed him, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. I was 7 the first time. Arya's breath caught, but she didn't speak, didn't move. He wanted to make me strong, unbreakable, a proper heir to the Valentino Empire. Dante's voice was flat, emotionless. When I was 12, he made me watch him kill a man who'd stolen from us, put the gun in my hand after, and told me to finish it. I threw up all over the corpse. He paused. He beat me unconscious for that, said weakness was a disease. Dante, when I was 15, I stopped being weak, stopped feeling much of anything. I did what he wanted, became what he needed. And when he died, I took over and promised myself I'd never be like him. His laugh was hollow. But here I am, keeping a woman who doesn't want to be kept, because I'm too fucking selfish to let her go. Arya's throat was tight. I'm sorry for what he did to you. No child should... Don't! His voice was sharp. Don't pity me. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you so you understand that I'm damaged, Arya. I don't know how to want something without taking it. I don't know how to care about someone without controlling them. It's all I know. She should have been afraid, should have run. Instead, she found herself reaching out, her hand covering his where it rested on the bed. Dante went perfectly still. You're not your father, Arya said quietly. You could have forced me into your bed the first night. You haven't. You could have isolated me completely from my mother. You haven't. You're trying to be better than him, even if you don't see it. I bought you. His voice was raw. How is that better? You gave me a choice when I had none. You're keeping your promises. You're taking care of me, even though I hate that I need it. She squeezed his hand. It's not good, Dante. It's not right. But it's not him. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Dante's hand turned under hers, his fingers lacing through hers, holding on like she was the only solid thing in the world. Stay, he whispered, just for tonight. I don't want to be alone. Arya knew she should say no, should go back to her room, maintain the careful distance they'd built. But she thought about 7-year-old Dante locked in a basement, and she couldn't make herself walk away. Okay. They lay down side by side on top of the covers, hands still clasped between them. Dante's breathing slowly evened out. Arya stared at the ceiling and wondered what the hell she was doing. She fell asleep to the warmth of his hand in hers and woke to sunlight streaming through the windows. Dante was gone, but there was a note on the pillow beside her in sharp, angular handwriting. Thank you. D. She held the note for a long time, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. Everything was changing. She could feel it shifting, like tectonic plates moving beneath her feet. And she didn't know if that terrified her or thrilled her. Maybe both. After that night, something shifted between them. Not dramatically. Dante didn't suddenly become warm or open, but the careful distance they'd maintained started to crumble in small, almost imperceptible ways. He began appearing in spaces she occupied. The library became a shared territory where they'd read in silence, him with business documents, her with novels she'd never had time for before. The garden walks happened more frequently, sometimes with conversation, sometimes without. He'd find her in the music room teaching herself piano on the Steinway no one else touched, and he'd sit in the corner chair watching until she got self-conscious and stopped. Keep playing, he'd say. I like listening to you make mistakes. It's honest. Arya didn't know what to do with that, with any of it. With the way he'd started looking at her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve, or the way her heart would skip when she heard his voice in the hallway. 2 months after she had moved in, Dante returned from a week-long trip to New York looking exhausted. It was nearly midnight when she heard him come in. She was in bed reading when there was a soft knock on her door. Come in, she called, expecting Mrs. Chen with something she'd forgotten. Dante stood in the doorway, still wearing his suit, his tie loosened, his eyes shadowed with fatigue. I'm back. I can see that. Arya set her book aside, sitting up. How was New York? Productive, tedious, long. He leaned against the doorframe. Did you eat dinner? Yes, Dante, I ate all 3 meals today, like a good girl. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Sarcasm. That's new. I'm adapting to captivity. Good. He pushed off the frame, and for a moment she thought he'd leave. Instead, he crossed to her bed and sat on the edge, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with the scent of travel and exhaustion. I missed you. The words were so simple, so quietly devastating. Arya's throat tightened. You shouldn't. Probably not. He looked at her with those storm-gray eyes that saw too much. But I did anyway. Spent a week in meetings thinking about whether you were eating enough, sleeping enough, whether you were lonely, whether you hated me a little less or a little more. I don't hate you. The admission came out before she could stop it. You should. I know. Arya pulled her knees to her chest. It would be easier if I did. Dante reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Arya. Don't. Her voice was barely a whisper. Don't what? Don't make me feel things for you. Don't make this complicated. It was always going to be complicated. His hand dropped away, but he didn't move back. The first time I saw you, you were on your hands and knees scrubbing a floor that didn't need scrubbing. Your supervisor was berating you for missing a spot that wasn't even there, and you just apologized and scrubbed harder. I watched you for 5 minutes before I made my head of security fire that supervisor. Arya blinked. Mrs. Chen's predecessor? The woman who got let go last year? She was cruel to staff who couldn't fight back. I don't tolerate that. He paused. But the reason I noticed wasn't because of her. It was because of you. The way you kept working even when you were shaking with exhaustion. The dignity you maintained even on your knees. I couldn't stop watching you after that. That's not normal, Dante. Nothing about me is normal. His voice was rough. I'm obsessive, controlling. I see something I want and I take it. It's pathological. I know that. But knowing doesn't change what I am. Arya should have been frightened. Instead, she felt something dangerous unfurling in her chest. What do you want from me? Really? Everything. He said it without hesitation. Your time, your attention, your thoughts. I want to know what makes you smile and what makes you sad. I want to erase every moment you spent suffering before you came here. I want you to stop looking at me like I'm a monster and start seeing me as a man. You are a monster, though. You run an empire built on violence and fear. Yes. You've probably killed people. Yes. You bought me like I was property. Yes. His jaw tightened. And I'm not sorry for any of it except the parts that hurt you. I'd do it all again if it meant keeping you here. The honesty was brutal. Arya's hands twisted in her blanket. What if I can't give you what you want? What if I can't feel for you what you feel for me? Then I'll live with it. Dante stood, and she felt the loss of his proximity like cold air rushing in. But I think you're lying to yourself, Arya. I think you feel it too, and it scares you. He left before she could respond, closing the door softly behind him. Arya sat in the dark for a long time, her heart racing, her thoughts a tangled mess. He was right. She was terrified. Because somewhere between the carefully prepared meals and the garden walks, and the nights when she'd hear him pacing in his room and want to go to him, she'd started falling. And falling for Dante Valentino felt like stepping off a cliff with no certainty of what waited at the bottom. 3 days later, Arya's mother called with news that made her burst into tears. The cancer was in remission, full remission. The doctors were cautiously optimistic that with continued treatment, Patricia could beat this completely. Arya sat on her bed, sobbing into the phone, while her mother cried on the other end, both of them overwhelmed with relief and hope and gratitude. When she finally hung up, she found Dante standing in her doorway. I heard you crying. He looked uncertain, like he didn't know if his presence was welcome. Is your mother? She's going to be okay. Arya wiped her face, smiling through the tears. They said the cancer's in remission. She's going to be okay. Something in Dante's expression softened. That's good. That's really good, Arya. Before she could think better of it, she crossed the room and threw her arms around him. He went rigid for a heartbeat. Then his arms came around her, holding her tight. She buried her face in his chest and let herself break down, let herself feel the crushing weight of relief after months of terror. Dante held her through it all, one hand stroking her hair, his voice a low murmur against her ear. "It's okay. I've got you. You're okay." When she finally pulled back, embarrassed by her outburst, he kept his hands on her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered, "for keeping your promise, for saving her." "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do. I know what the deal was, but you could have made it worse, made me feel worse. You didn't." Dante's thumb traced her collarbone absently. "I told you I'd take care of you. That includes your happiness, Arya, even when it doesn't directly benefit me." She looked up at him, at the man who'd bought her, and kept her and treated her like something precious, despite having every reason not to. "I want to cook you dinner." He blinked, clearly surprised. "What?" "Tomorrow night. I want to cook for you, as a thank you." She was suddenly nervous, her hands twisting together. "If that's okay, if you want, I'd like that." His voice was careful, like he was afraid of scaring her off. "Very much." The next evening, Arya took over the massive kitchen while the staff looked on with barely concealed amusement. She made her mother's recipe for chicken marsala, roasted vegetables, homemade bread. Nothing fancy, nothing that belonged in a house like this, but it was hers. It was real. Dante appeared at 7 sharp, drawn by the smell of cooking. He'd shed his usual suit for dark jeans and a black Henley, looking younger and more approachable. He leaned against the counter watching her work. "Can I help?" "You cook?" Arya raised an eyebrow. "I can follow instructions without burning down a kitchen. That counts, right?" She laughed despite herself and handed him a knife and vegetables. They worked side by side, and for the first time since she'd arrived, the silence between them felt comfortable instead of loaded. Over dinner, Dante asked about her childhood. She told him about growing up in a small apartment with a single mother who worked herself to the bone but still found time for bedtime stories. About community college classes she'd loved but never finished when money got tight. About dreams of becoming a teacher that had gotten buried under the weight of survival. "You could still do that," Dante said. "Go back to school, finish your degree." Arya shook her head. "That life doesn't exist for me anymore." "Why not?" "Because I'm here. Because I belong to you, because I can't exactly put mistress to a mafia boss on a teaching resume." Dante's expression darkened. "You're not my mistress." "Then what am I?" "Mine." The word was possessive, absolute. "You're mine, Arya, but that doesn't mean you can't have dreams. That doesn't mean you can't want things. What I want doesn't matter." The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. "I made a choice, and now I live with it. That's how this works." "What if I told you that you could have both?" Dante pushed his plate aside, leaning forward. "Stay here with me, but go to school. Finish your degree. Become a teacher if that's what you want. I won't stop you. And when you get bored of me, when you find someone else, what then?" His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make her look at him. "I'm not going to get bored of you. I'm not going to find someone else. You don't understand what you are to me." "Then explain it." She pulled her wrist free, anger and confusion warring in her chest. "Make me understand why you're doing this, why you want me so badly." Dante stood abruptly, pacing to the window. When he spoke, his voice was raw. "My father kept women, dozens of them. They were interchangeable to him, bodies, transactions, things he used and discarded. I swore I'd never be like that. I swore if I ever let someone in, it would mean something." He turned to face her. "Then I saw you, and for the first time in my life, I wanted something that wasn't about power or control or proving I was better than him. I just wanted you, the real you, not a performance, not a transaction. You." Arya's breath caught. "That's not fair." "I know. You can't just say things like that and expect—" "I don't expect anything." He crossed back to her, crouching beside her chair so they were eye level. "But I need you to understand that this isn't casual for me. You're not a whim or a distraction. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing before I sleep. You're the reason I come home. And I know that's fucked up. I know I have no right to feel this way about someone I essentially bought, but I do. And I'm not sorry." Arya's hand shook in her lap. "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything." Dante's hand covered hers, warm and steady. Just let me keep you. Let me take care of you, and maybe, eventually, let yourself feel something back. She should have said no. Should have pulled away, maintained the walls she'd built. Instead, she found herself leaning forward, her forehead resting against his. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Of me? Of this? Of what it means? Of wanting you when I shouldn't?" Dante's breath ghosted across her lips. "Do you? Want me?" "I don't know." It was a lie. They both knew it. "Maybe? Maybe is a start." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "Can I kiss you?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. Arya's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew if she said yes, everything would change. The careful balance they'd maintained would shatter. But she was so tired of fighting, tired of pretending she didn't feel the pull between them. "Yes." Dante's eyes darkened. He stood, pulling her up with him, and for a moment he just looked at her, really looked, like he was memorizing every detail. Then his hand cupped her face, and he kissed her. It was gentle at first, almost tentative, like he was afraid she'd break. But when Arya's hands came up to grip his shirt, when she kissed him back with months of pent-up confusion and longing, something in him snapped. His other hand slid into her hair, angling her head, deepening the kiss until she was breathless and dizzy and holding on to him like he was the only solid thing in the world. When they finally broke apart, Arya was shaking. Dante rested his forehead against hers, his breathing ragged. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. "Tell me this is too fast and I'll back off. I'll give you time." Arya's fingers curled into his shirt. "What if I don't want time?" His control was hanging by a thread. She could see it in the tension of his shoulders, the way his hands trembled slightly against her skin. "Arya, I'm tired of fighting this." She looked up at him, her eyes burning. "I'm tired of pretending I don't want you. I'm tired of being scared." "You should be scared." His voice was rough. "I told you, I'm obsessive. Once I have you, I won't let go." "You already have me. The contract, the deal, all of it. You already own me." "That's not the same as you choosing me." "Then let me choose." She pulled him down, kissing him again, pouring every confused emotion into it. "Let me choose you, even if it's stupid, even if I regret it later." Dante groaned against her mouth, his restraint finally breaking. He lifted her easily, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her out of the dining room, through the hallways, up the stairs. She expected him to take her to his room, but he stopped at hers instead. "Your space," he said, setting her down gently. "If we do this, it's on your terms. In your room. You stay in control." It was such a small thing, but it meant everything. Arya's throat tightened as she pulled him inside and closed the door. What happened next was a blur of sensation, desperate kisses, trembling hands, whispered names. Dante was careful with her, almost reverently so, like she was something holy he was afraid of breaking. When it was over, they lay tangled in her sheets, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" His voice was quiet in the darkness. Arya didn't answer right away. She was trying to process what had just happened, what it meant, how it changed everything. "I don't know what I am." "Regret?" "No." She tilted her head to look at him. "Not regret, just confused. I didn't think I could want this. Want you. And now? Now I don't know how to go back to pretending." Dante's arms tightened around her. Then don't. Stay here. With me. Not because of the deal, not because of your mother, because you want to." It was too much, too soon. But Arya found herself nodding anyway, letting herself believe that maybe this could be something more than a transaction. That maybe Dante Valentino, for all his darkness and control, could be someone worth choosing. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time since her world had fallen apart, Arya felt something close to peace. The next few weeks passed in a haze of discovery. Dante didn't move her into his room permanently, but most nights ended with them in one bed or the other. He was insatiable in his need for her, not just physically, but in every way. He wanted to know her thoughts, her opinions, her fears. He brought her coffee in the morning exactly how she liked it. He noticed when she was quiet and drew her out with gentle questions. He protected her from the uglier parts of his world while slowly introducing her to the legitimate side of his empire. Arya met his business associates at carefully orchestrated dinners where she played the role of his companion. She learned to smile and make small talk while men who'd probably killed people discussed market strategies and investment opportunities. Dante's hand would rest on her lower back during these events, a constant reminder of his presence, his protection. But there were moments that cracked the illusion of normalcy, like the night she woke to find his side of the bed empty and discovered him in his office at 3 in the morning, staring at security footage of the estate with a gun on his desk. Or the time she overheard him on the phone speaking in rapid Italian, his voice cold and threatening, before he hung up and turned to her with a smile like nothing had happened. She was living in two worlds, the one where Dante was hers, tender and attentive, and the one where he was something darker, something she couldn't fully comprehend. One afternoon, 3 months into their relationship, Arya felt nauseous during lunch. She excused herself and barely made it to the bathroom before she was sick. It happened again the next day, and the day after that. At first, she dismissed it as stress or a stomach bug, but when her period was a week late, then 2, a cold dread settled in her stomach. She bought a pregnancy test during a visit to her mother, hiding it in her purse while Patricia talked excitedly about her latest clean scan. Back at the estate, Arya locked herself in her bathroom and took the test with shaking hands. 2 lines. Positive. She stared at the plastic stick, her mind blank with shock. This couldn't be happening. They'd been careful, or she thought they had. But apparently not careful enough. A baby. She was carrying Dante Valentino's baby. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She slid down the bathroom wall, the test clutched in her hand, and tried to breathe through the panic. What was she supposed to do? How was she supposed to tell him? Would he even want this? The bathroom door opened. Arya's head snapped up to find Dante standing there, his expression shifting from concern to confusion as he took in her position on the floor. Arya, what's wrong? She couldn't speak, could only hold up the test with a trembling hand. Dante went very still. He crossed the space between them in 2 strides, taking the test from her, his eyes locked on the 2 lines. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't breathe. Then he looked at her, and what she saw in his face made her blood run cold. Not shock, not surprise. Satisfaction. You knew. The words came out strangled. You knew this would happen. Dante's expression didn't change. Yes. The world tilted. Arya scrambled to her feet, backing away from him. What? I knew. He set the test down carefully on the counter. I stopped being careful weeks ago. I wanted this to happen. Rage exploded in her chest, white-hot and consuming. You did this on purpose? You got me pregnant on purpose? Yes. Why? She was shouting now, her voice breaking. Why would you do that? Because it was the only way to keep you. Dante's voice was calm, controlled, like they were discussing the weather. You were starting to pull away. I could feel it. You were getting stronger, more independent. Your mother's getting better. Eventually, you'd have asked to leave, and I couldn't let that happen. Arya felt like she was going to be sick again. So you trapped me. You deliberately got me pregnant to trap me. I bound you to me, yes. He stepped toward her, and she flinched back. Something flickered in his eyes, pain, maybe, or regret. But not enough. Not nearly enough. A child changes everything, Arya. Now you can't leave. Now you're mine in a way that can't be undone. You're insane. Tears were streaming down her face. You're fucking insane. This is beyond controlling, Dante. This necessary. His jaw was tight. I told you I was obsessive. I told you I don't know how to want something without taking it. You knew what I was. I trusted you. The words were a scream. I gave myself to you. I let myself fall for you. And this whole time you were planning to make sure you stayed. He reached for her and she slapped his hand away. Don't touch me. Don't ever fucking touch me again. Arya, please. You said I had control. You said it was my choice. You lied. I never lied. Dante's composure was cracking, his voice rough. I told you I'd do everything I could to make you stay. This is everything. Arya backed toward the door, her whole body shaking with fury and betrayal. I hate you. I will hate you for the rest of my life for this. I can live with that. His eyes were dark, haunted. As long as you're here. As long as you're mine. She ran. Out of the bathroom, out of her room, down the hallways she'd come to know. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to get away from him, needed air, needed space to think. She ended up in the garden, collapsing on a bench by the fountain, sobbing so hard she thought she might break apart. Everything, every tender moment, every gentle touch, every whispered promise, had been a lie. Or not a lie exactly, but manipulation. A calculated plan to keep her trapped. And it had worked, because she was pregnant now, with his child, bound to him in the most permanent way possible. She didn't know how long she sat there before Dante found her. He approached slowly, like she was a wild animal that might bolt. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "I'm sorry." Arya laughed bitterly. "No, you're not. I'm sorry for hurting you, but I'm not sorry for doing it." He sat down on the opposite end of the bench, maintaining distance. "I can't be sorry for taking the only path that keeps you in my life." "That's not love, Dante. That's possession." "Maybe there's no difference. Not for me." He stared at the fountain, his profile sharp in the fading light. "My father used to say that Valentinos don't know how to love. We only know how to own. I thought I was different, but maybe he was right." Arya wiped her face with shaking hands. "What happens now?" "Now you decide." Dante finally looked at her, and there was something broken in his eyes. "You can hate me. You can rage at me. You can make my life hell if that's what you need. But you're not leaving. That option doesn't exist anymore." "Because of the baby. Because of the baby." He paused. "Because I won't let you go. Because I'll use every resource I have to keep you here. Because I'm a monster who loves you in the only way he knows how." The words should have been romantic. Instead, they felt like a death sentence. Arya stood on shaking legs. "I need time. Away from you. Take all the time you need." Dante's voice was hollow. "But take it here, in this house, where I can make sure you're safe." She wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but she was exhausted, heartbroken, and pregnant with a child she hadn't chosen. So she just nodded and walked away, leaving him alone in the garden. That night, Arya locked her bedroom door for the first time in weeks. She curled up on her bed and cried until she had nothing left. And when the sun rose the next morning, she was still there, still pregnant, still trapped in a gilded cage with a man who loved her enough to destroy her. The days that followed were a special kind of hell. Arya avoided Dante as much as she could in a house where his presence was everywhere. She ate meals in her room. She spent hours in the library or the garden, anywhere he wasn't. When they did cross paths in hallways or doorways, she looked through him like he was made of glass. Dante didn't push. He watched her from a distance with those storm-gray eyes that had once made her feel seen and now just made her feel owned. He had meals sent to her room on silver trays. He left prenatal vitamins on her nightstand. He respected the locked door between their rooms, even though they both knew he could break it down if he wanted to. The silence between them was louder than any argument could have been. 2 weeks after the revelation, Arya woke up nauseous and dizzy. She barely made it to the bathroom before she was sick, her body rejecting everything she'd tried to eat the night before. She was on the cold tile floor, shaking and miserable, when she heard footsteps. Dante appeared in the doorway. He must have heard her through the walls. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then he crossed to her, pulled her hair back gently, and held it while she was sick again. "Don't," Arya said weakly when she could speak. "I don't want your help." "I know." He didn't let go. "But you're getting it anyway." When the worst passed, he helped her to her feet, got her water, handed her a washcloth. His touch was careful, impersonal, like she was made of something fragile that might shatter. Arya hated how much she wanted to lean into it, how much her treacherous body still responded to his proximity. "You need to eat," Dante said. "The baby needs—" "Don't," her voice was sharp. "Don't talk to me about what the baby needs. You don't get to care about this baby when you only created it to trap me." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or guilt. But his voice stayed steady. "Regardless of my motives, you're pregnant. You need proper nutrition. Let me call the doctor." "I don't want your doctor." "Then I'll find one you do want." He was using that calm, controlled tone that made her want to scream. "But you're seeing someone. Today. That's not negotiable." Arya was too tired to fight. She nodded, slumping against the sink. Dante left without another word, and she heard him making calls from his room, his voice low and authoritative. Within 2 hours, a woman arrived at the estate. Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen apparently, was in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She examined Arya thoroughly, asked questions about her symptoms, and took blood samples. "You're about 8 weeks along," Dr. Chen said, making notes on her tablet. "The nausea should ease up in the next few weeks. In the meantime, try eating small amounts throughout the day instead of large meals. Crackers before you get out of bed can help. And stay hydrated." "Is everything okay?" Arya asked, hating how small her voice sounded. "With the baby?" "Everything looks good so far. But you're underweight and showing signs of stress." Dr. Chen's gaze was knowing. "Pregnancy is hard enough without additional factors. Do you have support? Someone you can talk to?" Arya thought about her mother, who still didn't know the truth about her situation. About the staff who treated her with careful respect but kept their distance. About Dante, who'd engineered this whole nightmare. "No," she said quietly. "Not really." Dr. Chen handed her a card. "This is my personal number. Call me if you need anything, medical or otherwise. And I mean anything, Arya. You don't have to go through this alone." After the doctor left, Arya sat in her room staring at the card. She should have felt grateful. Instead, she just felt empty. That night, there was a knock on her door. She almost didn't answer, but something made her get up and unlock it. Dante stood there with a tray. Not dinner, crackers, ginger tea, plain toast. Things Dr. Chen had recommended. "Can I come in?" he asked. Arya stepped aside wordlessly. Dante entered, set the tray on her nightstand, and stayed standing by the door like he wasn't sure he was welcome to sit. "I talked to the doctor," he said. "She's concerned about your stress levels." "I wonder why I'm stressed." The sarcasm was acid. "Arya, what do you want, Dante? Why are you here?" He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "Because you're suffering, and it's my fault. Because I can't stand seeing you like this. Because even though you hate me, I still..." "Still what? Still love me?" She laughed bitterly. "You don't love me. You can't love someone and do what you did." "You're wrong." His voice was raw. "Everything I did was because I love you. I just don't know how to do it right. I don't know how to love someone without destroying them." "Then learn." Arya stood, crossing to where he stood. "You want me to stay? You want this to work? Then stop trying to control everything. Stop manipulating me. Stop treating me like something you own. You're asking me to change who I am. I'm asking you to try." Her eyes burned with unshed tears. "I'm asking you to give me a reason to want to be here beyond obligation, beyond this baby that I didn't choose." Dante's hands clenched at his sides. "What if I can't? What if this is all I know? Then we're both trapped in a nightmare of your making." Arya turned away, exhaustion weighing down every word. "And eventually, that's going to kill whatever feelings I had for you, if it hasn't already." She heard him leave, the door clicking shut softly. And for the first time since discovering she was pregnant, Arya let herself think about the future. About raising a child with a man who saw people as possessions. About teaching her son or daughter what love was supposed to look like when she was living proof of what it wasn't. The thought terrified her. Over the next few weeks, something strange started happening. Dante began pulling back. Not completely. He still left food for her, still checked that she was eating, still kept his distance when she needed space. But he stopped trying to justify what he'd done, stopped making excuses. He just existed in the same space as her, quiet and present, like he was waiting for something. Arya found herself watching him when she thought he wasn't looking, noticing the shadows under his eyes that suggested he wasn't sleeping. The way his hands would flex like he wanted to reach for her but stopped himself. The careful way he moved around her, like he was afraid one wrong step would make her break completely. One night, she heard him screaming again. The nightmares that had quieted while they were together had come back with a vengeance. She lay in bed listening to his distress through the wall, her hands pressed to her still flat stomach, torn between anger and something dangerously close to sympathy. She made it 10 minutes before she couldn't stand it anymore. Arya found him the same way she had months ago, sitting on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, shaking. But this time when she entered, he didn't tell her to leave. He just looked at her with such raw devastation that her breath caught. "I'm breaking you," he said hoarsely. I can see it. Every day you look a little more hollow, and it's my fault. Yes. She didn't sugarcoat it. It is your fault. I don't know how to fix it. You can't fix it. Arya stayed by the door, maintaining distance. You can't undo what you did, but you can decide what you do next. What do you want me to do? She thought about it, really thought about it. I want honesty. No more manipulation, no more schemes. If you want me here, you have to let me choose it every day. And some days I'm going to choose to hate you. Some days I'm going to choose to be so angry I can't stand to look at you. Can you live with that? Dante's jaw tightened. If it means you stay, yes. I'm not staying for you. Her hand went to her stomach. I'm staying for this baby, because they deserve better than growing up with separated parents in a custody battle. Because despite everything, I think you might actually be able to love them the right way, even if you can't love me the right way. The words seemed to hit him like physical blows. I do love you the right way. I just showed it wrong. That's not how it works, Dante. Arya's voice was tired. Love isn't just feeling something. It's action. It's choice. It's putting someone else's well-being above your own wants. You chose to trap me. That's not love. That's possession. Then teach me. He stood, taking a tentative step toward her. Teach me the difference. I'll learn. I'll do whatever it takes. I can't teach you how to be a decent human being. That's not my job. Then what is your job? In this mess we're in, what do you want your role to be? Arya considered. I want to be your equal, not your prisoner, not your possession. If we're going to raise this child together, we do it as partners. That means I get a say in decisions. It means you don't make choices for me without my input. It means you respect when I say no. Okay. She blinked. Okay. Okay. Dante's voice was firm. Equal partners. You want something, you tell me. You disagree with me, you say so. You need space, I give it to you. No manipulation, no schemes, just honesty. You're saying that now, but I mean it, Arya. He closed the distance between them slowly. I fucked up. I know that. I destroyed your trust, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life rebuilding it. But I can't do that if you've already given up on me. I have given up on you. The words were cruel, but necessary. The man I thought I was falling for doesn't exist. He was a performance to keep me compliant. Pain flashed across Dante's face. That's not true. Everything I showed you was real. I also planned the pregnancy. Both things can be true. That doesn't make it better. I know. He reached for her hand slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers intertwined with hers. But I'm asking for a chance anyway. Not to go back to what we had. We can't. But to build something new, something real. Arya looked down at their joined hands. She should pull away, should maintain her anger, her distance. But she was tired. So tired of fighting, of hating, of carrying this rage that was eating her alive. I don't forgive you, she said quietly. I don't expect you to. And I don't trust you. I'll earn it back. You might never earn it back. Then I'll spend my life trying. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I know I don't deserve another chance, but our baby deserves parents who can stand to be in the same room, who can work together, who can show them what partnership looks like even if we can't show them what love looks like. He was right, and she hated it. Hated that even now, even after everything, he could find the exact right words to make her stay. Fine, Arya pulled her hand back. We try, but on my terms. We sleep in separate rooms. We're not together like that anymore. We're co-parents. Nothing more. Dante's expression tightened, but he nodded. If that's what you need. It's what I need. Okay? He stepped back, giving her space. Thank you. For trying. For not giving up completely. Arya didn't respond. She just turned and went back to her room, closing the door between them. But she didn't lock it this time. It was a small thing, but it felt significant. The next morning, Dante was gone when she woke. Marco informed her he'd left for a business trip to Miami, something that couldn't be postponed. He'd be back in 4 days. Arya spent those 4 days in strange limbo. She visited her mother, who was thriving on her treatment and talking about going back to work part-time. Arya still hadn't told her about the pregnancy. Couldn't bear to see the questions in Patricia's eyes, the concern, the knowledge that her daughter's life had veered so far off course. She explored the estate more thoroughly than she had before, finding rooms she'd never entered, a home gym, a library annex filled with first editions, a sunroom with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the gardens. She was sitting there with a book she wasn't really reading when Mrs. Chen found her. "Miss Mitchell, may I speak with you?" Arya gestured to the chair across from her. Of course. Mrs. Chen sat with the careful posture of someone who'd spent years in service. "I wanted to check on you. The staff has noticed you seem troubled." That's one way to put it. "Mr. Valentino is a complicated man." Mrs. Chen's voice was careful. "I've worked for this family for 20 years. I knew his father. Dante is nothing like him. Everyone keeps saying that, because it's true." The older woman leaned forward slightly. "Antonio Valentino was cruel for cruelty's sake. He enjoyed causing pain. Dante causes pain because he doesn't know how not to. There's a difference." "Is there?" Arya set her book aside. "Because from where I'm sitting, the result is the same." "Perhaps, but Antonio would never have cared that he was hurting you. Dante is destroying himself over it." Mrs. Chen paused. "I'm not excusing what he did, but I've watched him these past weeks. He's trying. In his broken way, he's trying." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're going to have his child, and that child deserves parents who can find a way forward. I'm not saying you need to forgive him. I'm saying you might need to understand him." After Mrs. Chen left, Arya sat with those words. Understanding didn't equal forgiveness, but maybe it was a step toward something, toward coexistence, if nothing else. When Dante returned from Miami, he looked exhausted. Arya was in the library when he found her, and for a moment they just looked at each other across the space. "How was your trip?" she asked, trying for neutral. "Productive, tiring." He stayed by the door. "How are you feeling?" "The nausea is better. Dr. Chen was right about the crackers." "Good. That's good." Awkward silence stretched between them. "I brought you something." He held out a small box. Arya took it warily, opening it to find a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny book. "You mentioned once that you loved reading as a kid," Dante said, "that it was an escape when things were hard. I thought, I don't know, I saw it and thought of you." It was such a simple gesture. Nothing extravagant, nothing manipulative. Just a small acknowledgement that he'd listened to her, remembered something she'd said. Arya's throat tightened. "Thank you. Can I—" He gestured to the couch where she sat. "Can I sit with you? I won't talk. I just want to be near you." She should say no, should maintain the distance, the boundaries. But she found herself nodding. Dante sat on the opposite end of the couch, pulled out his phone, and started going through emails. Arya went back to her book. They existed in the same space, not touching, not talking, just breathing the same air. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't reconciliation, but it was something. Over the following weeks, they developed a new rhythm. Breakfast together, where they discussed logistics, doctor's appointments, estate business, her mother's progress. Dante started asking her opinion on things, actually listening when she disagreed with him. He stopped making unilateral decisions about her life and started presenting options, letting her choose. It was strange, learning to navigate this new dynamic. Sometimes Arya could almost forget what he'd done, could almost see glimpses of the man she'd been falling for. Then she'd remember the pregnancy test, the satisfaction in his eyes, and the anger would come roaring back. One evening, they were having dinner when Dante's phone rang. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "I need to take this." He stood, stepping away. Arya heard him speaking in rapid Italian, his voice hard and cold in a way it never was with her anymore. When he returned, his face was carefully blank. "I have to handle something. Tonight." "What kind of something?" He hesitated. "The kind you're better off not knowing about. Partners, remember? Honesty." Dante's jaw tightened. "Someone stole from me. A significant amount of money. I need to make an example or it'll happen again." The implications hung heavy in the air. "You're going to kill someone." "I'm going to handle a business problem." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer you're getting." His voice was firm. "This is my world, Arya. The parts I can keep you away from, I will. This is one of them." She wanted to argue. wanted to demand full transparency. But looking at him, at the hardness in his eyes, the set of his shoulders, she realized this was a line he wouldn't cross. Some parts of his life would always be dark spaces she couldn't enter. Fine, she stood. But don't come to me afterward expecting comfort. Don't expect me to absolve you. I don't expect anything. Dante moved toward the door, then paused. Lock your door tonight. Marco will be outside your room. If anything happens, if anything feels wrong, you go to him immediately. Nothing's going to happen. Lock your door, Arya. His voice was steel. Promise me. The fear in his eyes made her stomach clench. I promise. He left without another word. Arya sat alone in the dining room, her hand unconsciously going to her stomach where their child was growing. What kind of world was she bringing this baby into? What kind of father would Dante be when half his life existed in shadows she couldn't see? That night, she locked her door as promised and lay awake listening to the silence of the house. Dante didn't return until nearly dawn. She heard him moving in his room, heard the shower run for a long time, heard the heavy silence that followed. In the morning, he looked hollow. There was something in his eyes that made her think of the nightmares, the screaming, the little boy locked in basements. Whatever he'd done, it had cost him something. They didn't talk about it. Dante went back to being carefully gentle with her, and Arya pretended not to notice the shadows that clung to him like smoke. At her next doctor's appointment, they found out the baby's sex. Arya had asked Dante if he wanted to come, and after a long pause, he'd nodded. They sat in the exam room while Dr. Chen moved the ultrasound wand over Arya's barely showing stomach. The heartbeat filled the room, fast and strong and impossibly real. There's your baby. Dr. Chen pointed to the screen. See the head, the body. Everything looks perfect. Arya stared at the tiny form on the monitor, tears pricking her eyes. That was her baby. Real and growing and depending on her to protect it. Do you want to know the sex? Dr. Chen asked. Arya looked at Dante. He was staring at the screen like he'd never seen anything like it, his hand gripping the chair arm white-knuckled. Yes, Arya said softly. We want to know. It's a girl. Dr. Chen smiled. Congratulations. A girl. Arya was going to have a daughter. She looked at Dante and saw something break open in his expression, wonder and terror, and something so raw it hurt to witness. A girl, he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. We're having a daughter. After the appointment, they sat in the car in silence. Marco was driving them back to the estate, but Dante had put up the privacy partition. Are you okay? Arya asked finally. Dante's hand found hers gripping tight. I want to be good at this, at being a father, at being what you need me to be. Then just show up. Arya squeezed back. Be present. Be honest. Be willing to admit when you're wrong. That's all I'm asking. That's everything. I know. They rode the rest of the way in silence, hands clasped between them. And for the first time since the pregnancy revelation, Arya felt something other than anger or betrayal. She felt possibility, fragile and tentative and terrifying, but there. Maybe they couldn't go back to what they'd had. Maybe she'd never fully trust him again, never fully forgive him. But maybe they could build something different, something honest and complicated and real. For their daughter's sake, if nothing else, they had to try. The pregnancy progressed through summer into fall. Arya's body changed in ways that fascinated and terrified her. Her stomach grew round, her clothes stopped fitting, and she felt the baby move for the first time while sitting in the garden one afternoon. The flutter was so subtle she almost missed it, but then it came again, a tiny reminder that she wasn't alone in her own skin anymore. She was alone when it happened, and her first instinct was to find Dante. She tracked him down in his office, where he was in a meeting with 3 men in expensive suits. They all stood when she entered, but Arya only had eyes for Dante. She's moving, Arya said breathlessly. The baby. I can feel her. Dante was around his desk in seconds, his hand hovering over her stomach. Can I? Arya placed his hand where she'd felt the movement. They stood there frozen, waiting. The men in suits looked uncomfortable, clearly unsure whether to leave or stay. Then the flutter came again, stronger this time, and Dante's eyes went wide. That's her? His voice cracked slightly. That's her. For a moment, everything else fell away. The betrayal, the anger, the complicated mess of their relationship. None of it mattered as much as the tiny life moving between them. Dante's hand stayed on her stomach, his eyes locked on hers with something close to reverence. One of the men cleared his throat awkwardly. Dante seemed to remember they had an audience. "Get out," he said without looking at them. "All of you, we'll reschedule." The men left quickly, closing the door behind them. Dante's hand was still on Arya's stomach, his thumb tracing slow circles. "She's real," he said quietly. "I knew she was real, but feeling her changes everything," Arya finished. "I know." They stood like that for a long time, connected by his hand and the life growing beneath it. When Arya finally stepped back, Dante's hand fell to his side, but his expression stayed soft. "Thank you," he said, "for sharing that with me. You didn't have to." "She's your daughter, too." Arya's voice was careful. "Whatever else is broken between us, that's not changing. You deserve to be part of this." Something shifted in Dante's face, gratitude mixed with pain. "I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful anyway." After that day, the dynamic between them shifted again. Not back to what it had been, but into something new. They started spending more time together, not because Dante demanded it, but because Arya found herself seeking him out. To share updates about the baby, to discuss nursery plans, to simply exist in the same space. Dante threw himself into preparing for fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to everything else. He read parenting books. He interviewed pediatricians. He had an entire wing of the house renovated into a nursery suite, but only after presenting Arya with 3 different design options and letting her choose. The room they created together was beautiful in a way that hurt. Soft cream walls, a crib made from dark wood, shelves already filling with books and stuffed animals. A rocking chair by the window where Arya could imagine feeding her daughter while watching the gardens below. "It's too much," she said, standing in the doorway one afternoon while workers put finishing touches on the space. "Nothing's too much for her." Dante stood beside her, his hands in his pockets. "Or for you. You can't buy your way out of what you did." "I know." He didn't look at her. "But I can make sure my daughter has everything she needs, and right now you need to feel safe, prepared. So that's what I'm giving you." Arya wanted to argue, but the truth was she did feel safer with all the preparations. Having a plan, having everything ready, it made the terrifying prospect of motherhood feel slightly less overwhelming. At 5 months pregnant, Arya finally told her mother the truth. Not all of it. Patricia didn't need to know about the manipulation or the contract. But enough. That she was pregnant. That the father was Dante Valentino. That they were trying to figure out how to raise a child together despite their complicated relationship. Patricia had been silent for a long time after the confession, her hands wrapped around her teacup in Arya's sitting room. The cancer treatment had worked miracles. She looked healthy again, vibrant, more like her old self than she had in over a year. "Are you happy?" Patricia asked finally. The question caught Arya off guard. "I don't know, sometimes. Maybe." "Does he treat you well?" Arya thought about Dante's careful attention, the way he'd started asking instead of demanding, the reverence in his touch when he felt their daughter move. "He's trying to. It's complicated." "Love usually is." Patricia reached across to squeeze Arya's hand. "I won't pretend to understand your situation, but I see how you look when you talk about him. There's anger there, but there's something else too. Something that looks a lot like caring despite yourself." "I hate that I care about him." The words burst out before Arya could stop them. "After everything he's done, I should hate him. Only hate him, but I can't. That's what makes it love, baby. The fact that it survives even when it shouldn't." Patricia's eyes were knowing. "Just promise me you're protecting yourself, that you're not losing who you are for him." "I'm trying not to." Arya's hand went to her stomach. "But I don't know who I am anymore. I'm not who I was before. I can't be." "Then figure out who you are now. And make sure he sees that woman, respects her, values her. If he can't do that, all the love in the world won't be enough." After her mother left, Arya sat with those words. Who was she now? Not the struggling maid working herself to death, not the naive girl who'd fallen for a beautiful monster. She was something else, something harder, more complicated. A woman who'd survived being broken and was slowly reassembling herself into a new shape. That night she found Dante in the gym, working out his demons on a punching bag. His shirt was soaked with sweat, his knuckles wrapped in tape, his movements brutal and precise. She watched from the doorway as he drove his fists into the bag over and over, like he was fighting something invisible. "You're going to hurt yourself," she said finally. Dante stopped mid-punch, breathing hard. Wouldn't be the first time. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything." He unwrapped his hand slowly. "I got a call today. Someone's been asking questions about you, about us." Arya's stomach dropped. "What kind of questions?" "Who you are. How you came to be here. Whether you're here willingly." His expression was grim. "One of my rivals trying to find leverage. If they think you're a weakness, they'll use you to get to me." "So what does that mean?" "It means I'm increasing security. It means Marco stays with you whenever you leave the estate. It means we need to be more careful." He crossed to where she stood, his eyes intense. "It means my world is dangerous, and I'm sorry you're caught in it." "I'm not caught in it. You put me in it." "I know." His hand came up to cup her face, and she let him. "And if I could take it back, if I could keep you safe from all of this, you wouldn't." Arya's voice was steady. "Because that would mean letting me go, and we both know you won't do that." Dante's jaw tightened. "No, I won't. But I'll protect you with everything I have, you and our daughter." "What if that's not enough? What if someone gets through anyway?" "Then I'll burn the world down to get you back." He said it like a promise, and Arya believed him. That was the terrifying part. She believed every word. The threats materialized slowly. First it was a black sedan following them to a doctor's appointment, then a photographer outside the estate gates, then a phone call to Arya's cell from a blocked number, heavy breathing but no words before the line went dead. Dante's response was immediate and overwhelming. More guards, more cameras. He hired a security team that did full sweeps of the estate twice daily. He stopped leaving Arya alone, even in the house. When he had to travel, he left Marco and 2 other men with strict instructions not to let her out of their sight. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, Arya felt oddly protected. Like for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Dante was putting her safety above his own needs. He wasn't controlling her, he was shielding her. 1 week after the threat started, everything came to a head. Arya was in the garden in the late afternoon, Marco stationed discreetly by the gate, when a man appeared on the path ahead of her. He was in his 50s, gray-haired and expensive-suited, with a smile that made her skin crawl. "Arya Mitchell." His voice was smooth. "Or should I say Arya Valentino, though I understand you two aren't actually married." Marco was moving toward them, his hand going to his weapon, but the man held up his hands. "I'm not here to hurt her. I'm here to talk. 5 minutes, that's all I ask." "You need to leave." Marco's voice was hard. "Now." "Or what? You'll shoot me in broad daylight?" The man smiled. "I don't think Dante wants that kind of attention. Let me speak to the girl, then I'll go." Arya's heart was hammering, but she kept her voice steady. "What do you want?" "To give you information about the man who's keeping you prisoner here." "I'm not a prisoner. Aren't you?" The man tilted his head. "You live in his house, under his guards, carrying his child. When's the last time you had a choice about anything?" Marco was on his phone now, undoubtedly calling Dante. The man had maybe 2 minutes before the situation escalated badly. "Say what you came to say," Arya said. "Then leave. Dante Valentino is a monster. I'm sure you know that already. But do you know the extent of it? The people he's killed, the lives he's destroyed? There's a ledger, Arya. A detailed record of every crime, every murder, every act of violence he's committed. If that ledger went public, he'd spend the rest of his life in prison." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know you have options. You can help me bring him down. In exchange, I'll make sure you and your child are protected, financially secure. You'll never have to see him again." The man pulled a business card from his pocket, holding it out. "Think about it. That's all I ask." Before Arya could respond, Dante's voice cut through the garden like a blade. "Get away from her." He was striding down the path with 4 armed men behind him, his face a mask of cold fury. The gray-haired man didn't flinch. "Dante, always a pleasure." "Morrison." Dante's voice was ice. "You have 10 seconds to get off my property before I have you removed in pieces." "I was just leaving, but I made my offer. The girl's smarter than you give her credit for. She'll make the right choice." Morrison nodded to Arya. Think about it, dear. You don't have to raise your daughter in this world. He walked away calmly, disappearing through the garden gate. Dante watched him go, every muscle in his body coiled with violence. Are you okay? He turned to Arya, his hands hovering like he wanted to touch her, but wasn't sure he should. Did he hurt you? No, he just talked. Arya's voice was shaking despite her efforts to control it. He said there's a ledger, evidence of everything you've done. He wants me to help him use it against you. Dante's expression went carefully blank. And what did you say? Nothing. You showed up before I could respond. But if I hadn't, his eyes were dark, searching. What would you have said? Arya looked at him. This man who'd bought her, trapped her, and was now standing before her waiting to hear if she'd betray him. She thought about the ledger, about the evidence of all the terrible things he'd done, about the choice Morrison was offering her, freedom in exchange for Dante's destruction. I would have said no, she said quietly. Dante's breath left him in a rush. Why? Because you're the father of my child. Because despite everything, I don't want to see you in prison. Because... She stopped, not ready to finish that thought. Because what, Arya? Because somewhere along the way, I started caring about what happens to you. And I hate that. I hate that he was right. I am smarter than this. I should take his offer. I should burn you to the ground for what you did to me. Her voice cracked. But I can't. I can't do it. Dante closed the distance between them, pulling her into his arms. She went rigid at first, then collapsed against him, letting herself take comfort she didn't want to need. I'm sorry, he murmured into her hair. I'm so fucking sorry for dragging you into this world, for making you a target, for putting you in a position where men like Morrison think they can use you. Is it true? The ledger? Yes. No hesitation, no lies. It's insurance, mutual destruction if any of us betray the others. Morrison wants it because it would destroy me and half the criminal organizations in this city. How many people have you killed, Dante? His arms tightened around her. More than I can count. Less than my father. Does it matter? I don't know. Arya pulled back to look at him. Who are you really? The man who reads parenting books and builds nurseries, or the one with a ledger full of murders? Both. His honesty was brutal. I'm both, Arya. I'm the man who loves you and the monster who kills people. They're not separate. They're the same person. She should run, should take Morrison's offer and get as far from this life as possible. But looking at Dante's face, at the fear and hope and desperation there, she knew she wouldn't. We need rules, she said finally. Real ones. If I'm staying, if we're doing this, I need boundaries. Anything. You don't lie to me, ever. Even when the truth is ugly. Done. You don't make decisions about me or the baby without talking to me first. Done. And you do everything you can to keep your world away from our daughter. She doesn't grow up seeing violence. She doesn't grow up afraid. Can you promise me that? Dante's throat worked. I'll try. I can't guarantee it, but I'll try. Trying has to be enough. Arya stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. Because I can't keep doing this. The back and forth. The not knowing where we stand. I need to know if we're in this together, or if I'm just a possession you're keeping safe. You're not a possession, Dante's voice was rough. You're everything, Arya. You're the reason I come home. The reason I'm trying to be better. The reason I look at my empire and wonder if any of it matters compared to keeping you safe. Then prove it. Her voice shook. Not with words or gifts or grand gestures. Prove it every day by choosing me. Choosing us. Over whatever instinct tells you to control and manipulate. Can you do that? I don't know. The admission cost him. But I want to. More than I've wanted anything. Arya nodded slowly. Then we start there. With wanting. With trying. And we see what happens. That night, Dante asked if he could sleep in her room. Not in her bed. Just nearby, where he could make sure she was safe. Arya hesitated, then agreed. He slept on the couch in her sitting area, fully clothed, while she lay in bed listening to his breathing. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even comfortable. But it felt like a beginning. The next morning, Dante was gone before she woke, but there was coffee on her nightstand and a note. Had to handle Morrison. Don't worry, I won't kill him. Just making sure he understands you're off limits. D. Arya held the note, trying to decipher if that should comfort or concern her. Both, probably. Over the following weeks, the threats quieted. Morrison disappeared, not dead, according to Dante, just convinced to pursue his vendettas elsewhere. The black sedan stopped following them. The phone calls stopped. In the relative peace, Arya and Dante found a rhythm. They had breakfast together every morning. She started sitting in on some of his business meetings, the legitimate ones, offering opinions that surprised him with their insight. He started asking her about things beyond the baby, wanting to know her thoughts on books she was reading, places she wanted to travel, dreams she'd set aside. They were building something, fragile and strange and nothing like what either of them had expected, but real. At 7 months pregnant, Arya woke in the middle of the night to find Dante standing at her window, looking out at the grounds. She watched him for a moment, this man who still felt like a stranger sometimes, and felt their daughter move inside her. "Can't sleep?" she asked quietly. He turned, and in the moonlight she could see the vulnerability he usually hid so well. "I keep thinking about what kind of father I'll be, whether I'll know how to love her without breaking her." "Come here." Arya patted the bed beside her. Dante crossed the room, sitting carefully on the edge of her mattress. Arya took his hand and placed it on her stomach. Their daughter was active tonight, rolling and kicking. "Feel that?" Arya said. "That's her, strong and alive in ours. She's not broken, Dante. She's perfect. And as long as we remember that, as long as we put her first, we'll figure out the rest." His hand stayed on her stomach, his eyes locked on where their child moved beneath his palm. "I love you," he said suddenly. "I know I have no right to say it. I know I destroyed any claim I had to your love, but I need you to know. I love you, Arya. Not the idea of you, not what you represent. You." Arya's breath caught. She'd known on some level, had felt it in his actions, if not his words. But hearing it said aloud broke something open in her chest. "I don't know if I can say it back," she whispered. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm not asking you to." His free hand came up to cup her face. "I just needed you to know. Whatever happens, however this ends, I love you. That's real. That's true." She should push him away, should maintain the walls she'd built. But she was tired of fighting, tired of pretending she didn't feel the pull between them. So instead, she leaned into his touch and let herself imagine a future where love might be enough to rebuild what betrayal had broken. It probably wasn't. But in that moment, in the quiet darkness with their daughter moving between them, Arya let herself hope anyway. The weeks before Arya's due date passed in a strange blur of preparation and anticipation. Dante became obsessive about her comfort, adjusting the thermostat constantly, insisting she put her feet up, hovering like she might break at any moment. It drove her crazy and touched her in equal measure. "I'm pregnant, not dying," she said one evening when he tried to carry her up the stairs for the 3rd time that week. "I know that." His hands were gentle on her arms. "But you're carrying something precious. Let me help." "You can help by treating me like a person, not porcelain." Dante stepped back, properly chastised. "I'm sorry, I don't know how to do this. How to be useful without being controlling." It was the most honest thing he'd said in weeks, and Arya felt her anger deflate. "Just be present. That's all I need. Be here, be honest, and stop trying to manage everything." "I can try." He paused. "Actually, there's something I want to ask you about after the baby comes." Arya's stomach tightened. "What about it?" "I want us to be a family, a real one. Not just 2 people co-parenting, but—" He ran a hand through his hair, uncharacteristically nervous. "I want to marry you, Arya. Not because of obligation or control, because I want to build a life with you." The proposal hung between them, messy and imperfect. No ring, no grand gesture, just a broken man asking for more than he deserved. "I can't answer that right now," Arya said carefully. "Ask me again in a year, after we've both had time to see if this, whatever this is, can actually work. If you can actually be the partner you're promising to be." Dante's face fell slightly, but he nodded. "A year. I can do that. I can prove to you that I've changed." "You haven't changed, Dante. You've just started trying. There's a difference." She softened her voice. "But I see the effort. That counts for something." 3 days before her due date, Arya's water broke at 2 in the morning. She woke to wetness and cramping, and her first coherent thought was panic. Dante was in his own room. They'd maintained separate bedrooms despite the growing intimacy between them. And for a moment, she couldn't remember how to make her voice work. Then a contraction hit, sharp and real, and she managed to gasp out his name. Dante was in her room in seconds, still half asleep, but instantly alert when he saw her face. "What's wrong?" "The baby. She's coming." Everything after that was controlled chaos. Dante called Dr. Chen, got Arya dressed, had Marco bring the car around. By the time they were driving to the hospital, Arya's contractions were 5 minutes apart, and she was gripping Dante's hand hard enough to leave marks. "Breathe," he kept saying. "Just breathe, I've got you." "Easy for you to say," she gritted out between contractions. "You're not the one pushing a human being out of your body." Despite the pain, despite everything, Dante laughed. Fair point. Labor was brutal. 18 hours of contractions that felt like her body was tearing itself apart, of Dante holding her hand and whispering encouragement, of doctors and nurses checking her progress. Arya had never felt so vulnerable, so raw, so completely out of control. At hour 15, when the pain was so intense she couldn't see straight, she looked at Dante and said, "I hate you for this." "I know." His voice was thick. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. If I survive this, I'm never letting you touch me again. Whatever you want." But when the final push came, when Dr. Chen said she could see the head, Arya gripped Dante's hand and held on like he was the only thing anchoring her to earth. And when their daughter finally came into the world, screaming and perfect and impossibly tiny, Arya forgot about the pain, the anger, everything except the weight of new life being placed on her chest. "She's here," Dr. Chen said, smiling. "Congratulations. You have a healthy baby girl." Arya looked down at her daughter, red-faced and furious, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would probably be gray like her father's, and felt something break and rebuild inside her chest. This was her child, her daughter, the most important thing she would ever do. Dante was crying. She'd never seen him cry before, but tears were streaming down his face as he looked at their daughter. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Arya, she's perfect." "Do you want to hold her?" Arya asked. Dante looked terrified. "I don't know how." "Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." Dr. Chen helped transfer the baby into Dante's arms. He held her like she was made of glass, his whole body trembling, his eyes locked on the tiny face peering up at him. "Hi, Isabella," he murmured. They'd chosen the name weeks ago, after Dante's grandmother, who'd been the only person in his childhood who'd shown him kindness. "I'm your dad, and I promise I'm going to do better for you than my father did for me. I promise." Arya watched them together, father and daughter, and felt hope bloom in her chest for the first time in months. Maybe they could do this. Maybe love and effort could be enough. The first week home with Isabella was chaos. Neither of them knew what they were doing. The baby cried constantly, slept in 20-minute increments, and needed feeding every 2 hours. Arya was exhausted, hormonal, and bleeding in ways no one had adequately prepared her for. Dante tried to help, but was equally clueless, hovering anxiously while Arya navigated breastfeeding and diaper changes and the terrifying responsibility of keeping a tiny human alive. On the 4th night, Arya broke down completely. Isabella had been crying for 3 hours straight. Nothing was working, and Arya was so tired she could barely stand. She sat in the nursery rocking chair sobbing while her daughter screamed in her arms. Dante found them like that. He didn't say anything, just carefully took Isabella from Arya's arms and started walking the room, bouncing the baby gently. After a few minutes, Isabella's cries quieted to whimpers, then stopped entirely. She nestled against Dante's chest, finally content. "How did you do that?" Arya asked through her tears. "I have no idea." Dante looked stunned. "I just walked, and she stopped. I've been trying for hours." "You're exhausted. Let me take her tonight. You sleep." "I can't just—" "Yes, you can." His voice was firm but gentle. "We're partners, remember? That means you don't have to do this alone. Go sleep. I've got her." Arya was too tired to argue. She stumbled to her room and collapsed on the bed, asleep before her head hit the pillow. When she woke 8 hours later, she panicked. She'd never slept that long since Isabella was born. She rushed to the nursery to find Dante still awake, dark circles under his eyes, Isabella sleeping peacefully in his arms. Did you sleep at all? Arya asked. No, I was afraid to put her down. He smiled tiredly. But she's okay. We're okay. And you needed the rest. Something in Arya's chest cracked open. This man, this complicated, broken, dangerous man, had stayed up all night holding their daughter so she could sleep, had put her needs above his own without being asked. Thank you, she whispered. You don't have to thank me. She's my daughter too. He looked down at Isabella's sleeping face. I'd do anything for her. For both of you. After that night, they fell into a rhythm. Dante took the night shift several times a week, walking Isabella through her crying fits, changing diapers with fumbling but determined hands. Arya handled the feedings and the doctor's appointments. They traded off on sleep, on stress, on the overwhelming responsibility of new parenthood. And slowly, in the trenches of exhaustion and baby chaos, they started to heal. 1 month after Isabella was born, Arya's mother visited to meet her granddaughter. Patricia held the baby with practiced ease, cooing over her perfect features and tiny fingers. But her eyes, when they met Arya's, were sharp with questions. You look different, Patricia said when Dante had left them alone in the sitting room. Happier, more settled. I don't know about happy. Arya adjusted Isabella's blanket. But maybe more at peace. With him? Arya glanced toward the doorway where Dante had disappeared. He's trying, Mom. Really trying. He's not perfect. He's still controlling sometimes, still makes decisions without asking, but he's getting better, and he's an incredible father. That's good. But what about you? Are you staying for Isabella or because you want to? It was the question Arya had been avoiding asking herself. Both? I don't know. The lines are blurry now. Patricia handed Isabella back to her. Just make sure you're choosing this life, not just accepting it. There's a difference. After her mother left, Arya sat with those words. Was she choosing this, or just making peace with her cage? The answer wasn't simple. She was still angry about the manipulation, the deliberate pregnancy, the choice that had been stolen from her. But she also couldn't deny that something real had grown between her and Dante, something messy and complicated, and not at all what she'd expected. When Dante came to check on her that evening, she was still thinking about it. What's wrong? He asked, reading her expression. Nothing. Everything. Arya set Isabella in her bassinet. I'm trying to figure out if I'm happy or just resigned. Dante went very still. And what conclusion did you reach? I don't know yet. She turned to face him. I don't regret Isabella, not for a second, but I still regret how she came to be. I still hate that you took my choice. Does that make sense? Yes. He crossed to her slowly. For what it's worth, I regret it too. The method, not the result. If I could go back, You'd do the same thing. Arya cut him off. Because you wanted me to stay and you didn't trust that I would choose it myself. Be honest. Dante's jaw tightened. Yes, I'd probably do the same thing, but I'd regret it more, knowing how much it hurt you. The honesty was brutal, but Arya preferred it to pretty lies. At least you're not pretending to be someone you're not. I'm trying to be better, but I'm still me. Still selfish, still obsessive. I just love you both enough to fight against those instincts. He paused. Is that enough? Will it ever be enough? Arya looked at him, really looked, and saw the fear underneath the question. He was terrified she'd say no, terrified he'd lose them despite everything he'd done to keep them. Ask me again in a year, she said softly, when you promise to propose. Ask me then if it's enough. As the months passed, Isabella grew from a screaming newborn into a smiling baby who recognized her parents' faces and laughed at Dante's terrible attempts at peekaboo. She had his gray eyes and Arya's stubborn streak, and she owned both of them completely. Dante transformed in ways Arya never expected. He cut back on work, spending hours on the floor playing with Isabella. He sang to her in Italian, old songs his grandmother had taught him. He researched baby development obsessively, wanting to understand every milestone, every change. But he was still Dante Valentino, still the head of a criminal empire, still made decisions that resulted in people disappearing or worse. The darkness didn't go away just because he was a father now. It just lived alongside the tenderness, creating a cognitive dissonance that Arya struggled to reconcile. One night, when Isabella was 6 months old, Arya woke to find Dante's side of the bed empty. They'd started sleeping together again a few weeks prior. Not sexually, just sharing space, taking comfort in proximity. She found him in the nursery, standing over Isabella's crib with an expression of such fierce protectiveness it made her heart ache. "What's wrong?" she asked quietly. "I keep thinking about all the ways the world could hurt her." His voice was rough. "All the dangers I can't protect her from. What if I'm not enough? What if I fail her?" Arya crossed to him, sliding her arm around his waist. "You won't. You're already giving her what your father never gave you, love without conditions. That's enough." "Is it?" "I'm a criminal, Arya. I hurt people. What happens when she's old enough to understand what her father does? Then we tell her the truth." Arya surprised herself with the certainty in her voice. "We tell her that people are complicated, that her father made choices, some good, some terrible, but that he loves her more than anything. We teach her to be better than both of us while accepting us as we are." Dante turned to look at her. "You really believe that?" "I'm trying to." She paused. "I'm trying to believe that broken people can raise whole children, that love can be enough even when nothing else is, that we can give her better than what we had." He pulled her close, his arms coming around her. They stood like that for a long time, watching their daughter sleep, both terrified and hopeful in equal measure. The year mark approached faster than Arya expected. Isabella was walking, babbling nonsense words that occasionally sounded like mama or dada, and destroying everything within reach with delighted enthusiasm. Patricia's cancer remained in remission. The estate had become home in ways Arya never thought possible. And Dante, complicated, controlling Dante, had somehow become her partner in the truest sense. They still fought, still had moments where his instinct for control clashed with her need for autonomy. But they talked through it now, worked through it, instead of letting resentment fester. On the afternoon of their one-year anniversary, 1 year since Dante had asked her to marry him, he found her in the garden. Isabella was napping, and Arya was reading in the same spot where Morrison had confronted her months ago. "Can I sit?" Dante asked. She nodded, setting her book aside. He sat beside her, hands clasped between his knees, suddenly looking nervous. "It's been a year." "I know. I said I'd ask you again about marriage, about being a family." Arya's heart started racing. "Dante, wait. Let me say this first." He turned to face her fully. "I know I don't deserve you. I know what I did was unforgivable. I manipulated you, trapped you, took away your choice. And I've spent every day of the past year trying to prove that I'm more than that moment, more than that decision." "You have proven it." Arya's voice was soft. "You're not the same man who engineered my pregnancy. You're better, not perfect, but better. Then marry me." He pulled out a simple ring, platinum with a single diamond, elegant and understated. "Not because you have to, not because of Isabella or obligation. Marry me because you choose to, because you want this life with me, messy and complicated as it is." Arya looked at the ring, at his face, at the future stretching before them. She thought about the girl she'd been, desperate and powerless, selling herself to save her mother. She thought about the woman she'd become, stronger, harder, more complicated. She thought about Isabella sleeping in her crib, and the life they'd built in the ruins of betrayal and manipulation. "I need you to understand something first," she said. "I'm not the same person you bought. I won't let you control me. I won't let you make unilateral decisions about our life. If we do this, we do it as equals." "Equals?" Dante nodded. "I can do that." "Can you really? Because your instinct is always going to be to control, to manipulate. Can you fight that instinct every single day?" "I can try. That's all I can promise. I'll try every day to be the man you deserve." Arya took the ring from him, feeling its weight in her palm. This was it. The moment where she chose her future. Not out of desperation or obligation, but with full knowledge of what she was choosing. "Yes," she said quietly, "I'll marry you. Not because I've forgiven you for everything, I'm not sure I ever fully will, but because I choose this. I choose us." Dante's breath left him in a rush. He slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her into his arms. "I love you. I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth that choice." They married quietly a month later, just Patricia, Mrs. Chen, Marco, and Isabella, who spent the ceremony trying to eat Arya's bouquet. No grand affair, No spectacle. Just two imperfect people committing to build something real from the wreckage of their beginning. That night, after Isabella was asleep and the house had gone quiet, Dante and Arya lay together in their shared bed. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Any of it?" Arya thought about the question honestly. "I regret the manipulation, the loss of choice, the way it started. But I can't regret where we ended up. Isabella, this life, even you sometimes, I can't regret the good that came from the bad." "That's very evolved of you." "Don't get too excited. I'm still going to throw it in your face during arguments." Dante laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "I'd expect nothing less." 2 years after Isabella's birth, their life had settled into something resembling normal. Isabella was a whirlwind of energy and personality, speaking in full sentences and terrorizing everyone with her questions and opinions. Dante had stepped back from the worst parts of his business, delegating the truly dark work to people he trusted while focusing on the legitimate enterprises. Arya had gone back to school, finishing her degree in education. It was hard, balancing motherhood and studying, but Dante supported her fully. Hiring nannies when she needed time, staying home to watch Isabella, encouraging her when she wanted to quit. They weren't perfect. They still fought about his controlling tendencies, about the secrets he kept, about the life of crime that lurked in the shadows of their domesticity. But they were real, they were trying, and somehow that was enough. One evening, watching Dante teach Isabella how to read, Arya felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. This was her life now. Not the one she'd planned, not the one she would have chosen if given the option, but hers nonetheless. "What are you thinking about?" Dante asked, looking up from the children's book. "Just that life is strange." Arya sat beside them on the floor. "How the worst thing that ever happened to me led to the best things too." "Am I one of the best things?" There was vulnerability in his question. "Sometimes," she smiled. "When you're not being insufferable. I can live with sometimes." Isabella climbed into Arya's lap, demanding attention. And sitting there with her daughter in her arms and her husband beside her, Arya realized something important. Love wasn't what she had thought it was. It wasn't grand gestures or perfect moments. It was this, sitting on the floor surrounded by board books, with a man who'd broken her and a daughter who'd healed them both. It was choosing every day to stay, to try, to build something worth keeping. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it would always be enough. Because at the end of the day, they'd both learned the same lesson. That sometimes the most powerful choice you can make is to keep choosing, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Arya looked at Dante over their daughter's head and saw her future reflected in his eyes. Imperfect, complicated, and entirely their own. And for the first time since this whole impossible journey began, she wasn't afraid of it. She was ready.